Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
Everybody look at your hands. We can dance, everybody's taking the chance. Safe to dance, oh, it's safe to dance. Yes, it's safe to dance.
Hello and welcome to episode 234 of the Situational Awareness Matters show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to help improve situational awareness and high-risk decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-stress, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SAMatters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. I'm coming to you today from my office in St. Paul, Minnesota, having just returned from doing a consulting training program for the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. This is the second time we've done work for the shipyard, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to contribute to the safety of their team. It feels really good to be able to help those who protect the protectors. Today's feature segment focuses on some of the most challenging barriers to situational awareness you may face while working in high-risk, high-consequence environments. This is a continuation of last week's episode, so if you didn't see or listen to last week's show, you might want to swing back and give it a listen first, because I think it'll help improve your understanding of the concepts that are going to be shared in this week's show. The content that I'm sharing over these two episodes are part of the opening of what would be a live training event. Except in live events, of course, it's a lot more interactive because we've got students, and here we just have me talking into a camera lens. All right, let's jump into our feature segment, part 2 of this presentation, talking about some of the most challenging barriers to situational awareness, and I'll offer you some tips and tricks and hacks for overcoming these barriers. So let me sum up the situational awareness development process. It starts with perception, gathering information, looking, listening, smelling, feeling, tasting. Taking that information, turning it into electricity or puzzle pieces, and sending them down to the Etch-a-Sketch, where the jigsaw puzzle gets assembled. You assess your conscious and unconscious knowledge, trying to figure out how to put the puzzle together. Once the puzzle is put together, then you get to the point where you make a decision. A decision is where you determine your course of action. Now, oftentimes, what I'll ask people in a class is what happens after the decision. And inevitably, the answer that I get is you take an action. And usually when people are learning about decision making, the action does follow the decision, but I'm going to ask you to insert another step before you go to action, and that is prediction. I would like for you to think about your decision and then visualize the outcome of your decision prior to implementation. And if the prediction of your outcome is a good one, then engage in the task. But if the prediction of the outcome is not good, then don't engage in the task, but rather go back and think of another possible outcome, another possible decision that you could make until you find one that you can reasonably say would have a good outcome. There are 3 major factors that influence safe decision making. First is stress. The more stress you're under, the more challenging high-risk, high-consequence decision-making can be. Human factors, those things that because we are human, we have some limitations as to how quickly we can process information, and some things that can happen as the brain starts to be influenced by chemicals and neurotransmitters, and we go into this fight or flight and stress reaction mode and automatic performance mode, and these human factors can influence our decision making as well, and situational awareness. So stress, human factors, and situational awareness all come together to influence our safe decision making. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have these challenging things that I call barriers to situational awareness, those things that impact our ability to perceive, understand, and predict. And what I'd like to do now is go through a short list of some of the most challenging situational awareness barriers that you're likely to face in the workplace. First is task fixation. Task fixation occurs when we're doing work that requires hand and eye coordination. What the hands are doing, the eyes are watching, and our eyes can get fixated on the task. Task fixation is very common in jobs that require hand and eye coordination. But when we get fixated on the task, we can lose track of the fact that there is a bigger picture about the things that are happening around us. We're focused on the small picture instead of the big environment happening around us. And it's very easy to get fixated on a task for a long period of time and lose sight of the bigger picture for a long period of time. So what I'm going to suggest you do as a tip or a hack is to maintain a big picture awareness. Periodically stop what you're doing at the micro task level, disengage, and come to the big picture and look around and listen around and say to yourself, what have I been missing while I've been focused on the task? What things have been happening? What conditions have been changing on the big picture environment while I have been focused on the little picture? One of the things that you can do as well is consider assigning someone to watch the big picture. Now, that doesn't work in every environment, but if you have the staffing to be able to do that, to assign someone that while people are focused on the micro task, someone else's job is to watch out for the big picture and changing conditions. Distractions and interruptions we talked about as barriers to awareness, those things that draw your attention away. And one of those things that can draw our attention away is somebody coming up and talking to us at the time when we would least want to have a conversation with someone. But because we're social creatures, we tend to want to pause and be conversive and be social and be kind. And this can really cause some problems with someone's ability to pay attention to a task that they're trying to accomplish when they're interrupted. So what I'm going to suggest that you do as a hack is consider sterile communications. Sterile communications means that in the highest risk, highest consequence time periods of work, that you and those around you don't talk about anything that is not related to safely getting the task accomplished. So the communications are restricted to only those things important to the high risk, high consequence task completion. Once the task is completed, then you can lift the sterile communications and have conversations about anything that you want. But consider sterile communications as a way of controlling interruptions, which means you might not answer your phone or take a text message, or, depending on the circumstances, even answer a radio call during a period of sterile communications. Another barrier to awareness is confabulation. Confabulation means that your brain may be lying to you. You actually have two sets of eyes. You have your biological eyes, but you also have, as I talked about earlier, the mind's eye. The eye inside the brain, the eye that is on the Etch-a-Sketch. And sometimes what the biological eyes see and what the mind's eye see are not the same information. And sometimes we just don't have the facts. So our biological eyes are not seeing the factual information, and our mind's eye can make up the information based on past experiences. It can fill in the missing information with what it thinks should be there. And sometimes it gets it right, and sometimes it gets it horribly wrong. Expectations are what we see in our mind's eye, which can give rise to a couple of very significant human factor challenges: hallucinations and reverse hallucinations. Hallucinations in our mind's eye is seeing things with the mind's eye that the biological eye really does not see. Reverse hallucination is not seeing in the mind's eye what the biological eye actually does see. In other words, there can be things happening around us that we're completely unaware of, even though we're looking right at it. And we might see things that don't even exist because the brain is making those things up. So I want to ask you to be mindful of this tip that you may have a flawed perception of reality. The best way to determine this is to compare your reality with someone else. Ask them, what do you see? What do you think's going on? And you share what you see and what you think's going on. And if the two people don't have the same understanding, there's a high probability that one of them have a flawed perception of reality. Another barrier that I want to talk about is auditory exclusion. What does that mean? It means you're going deaf. Now, you might say, I don't want to go deaf, especially when I'm doing high-risk work. And I totally get that. But you can actually experience several different forms of auditory exclusion. Now, perhaps you've heard of tunneled vision, but maybe not tunneled hearing. One form of auditory exclusion is tunneled hearing. If you can think back to maybe when you played a sport in high school, and maybe there was a big play going on, and all the fans were in the stadiums or in the bleachers, and they're all cheering and screaming, ah! And while you were on the field or the court or in the arena, you didn't hear any of the fan noise. You were experiencing tunneled hearing. And when you're experiencing tunneled hearing, basically what your brain is saying is everything outside the little space where I'm working in, that's just noise. Turn it off. Get rid of it. And you can actually just tune out all those external sounds. Now, if it truly is noise, that can be helpful because it can help you concentrate. We've all been in environments where it's so noisy we can't even hear ourselves think. So when the brain can tune that out, that can be helpful. But sometimes what the brain tunes out is very important information that we wished we would have heard because it might have influenced our decision making or influenced our awareness if we were able to hear it, but we were experiencing auditory exclusion in the form of tunneled hearing. Another thing that can happen is that when someone is talking in an environment or we have several people talking and we're trying to concentrate on something, we can just stop listening to them. Literally tune them out. And this can happen over a radio. If you have information being shared over a radio and there's a lot of idle chatter on the radio and radio traffic that doesn't necessarily pertain to you, you might just tune out and stop listening to the radio altogether. And then something important might be said on the radio that's for you and you don't hear it. And you might think, well, if something important was said, I would tune back in and listen to the radio. That's a wish. It doesn't happen that way. Once you've experienced auditory exclusion and you tune out, your brain is not going to tune back in when something important is said and you will miss it. So if you depend on radio communications to create awareness in your work environment, consider conducting a communications audit and listen to a period of time of recorded radio communications to try to determine what communications are critical, what are essential, and what is non-essential. And I think what you'd find out is you have a lot of non-essential communications, basically chatter or conversational talk that really doesn't have to occupy space on a radio. And you could consider trying to figure out how to reduce that non-essential chatter type radio traffic, because as two people are chattering and everyone else is listening, you can bet that eventually they're going to just start tuning out and stop listening altogether. You can also consider using standardized terms and phrases. Standardized terms and phrases are very common in some industries where they have short phrases that have very big meaning. So they don't have to explain everything. They just have to use whatever that short industry phrase is, and then everybody understands the bigger meaning. Also consider that, as I'd mentioned, the sterile communications while performing high-risk activities. Another barrier to awareness is multitasking. The reason multitasking can be so challenging is because so many people think they're so good at multitasking, where in fact, the biological brain cannot pay attention to two conscious tasks at the same time. It can't. We know this by using brain scan technology. You can't give your conscious attention to two things at the same time. And you might say, oh yes, Rich, that's not true. I do it all the time. I'm always sharing my attention between multiple tasks. Let me explain to you how it happens. All right, I'm going to use the analogy of a computer. Now, it's kind of dangerous to compare the brain to a computer because they're not really anything alike, but I'm going to use a computer example. All right, so let's just say you open up your computer and you say, I got to type a Word document and send it to somebody. So you open up your whatever your word processor is and you start typing your document. And in the middle of typing your document, you say, oh my goodness, that just reminded me, I have to send an email to somebody. And then you minimize your Word document and bring up your email software and you start typing your email. And then while you're typing your email, you think to yourself, oh my goodness, that reminds me of something that I have to put onto my Word document. And then, clever as you are, you just put both onto your desktop, your Word document and your email, giving the appearance of maybe you're multitasking the Word document and email creation at the same time, but you're not. Because you can only work on one document at a time. You can only type on the Word document and then go over to the email and then back to the Word document and then over to the email. And that's exactly how the brain works when it comes to paying attention. You can only give the conscious attention to one task. You can shift your attention back and forth quickly, but as you shift attention, there's a high probability that information will be lost. So one of the tips or tricks or hacks related to multitasking is to consider prioritizing your work and keeping focused on just one conscious task at a time before you shift attention, or delegating tasks to someone else and letting someone else do it because your attention is tied up on a particular task. Another barrier to awareness is mission myopia. Mission myopia means that you can become committed to a mission that you're trying to accomplish without much consideration to the risk that is involved because you're so focused on the mission. Mission myopia means putting the accomplishment of the mission ahead of safety, ahead of your personal safety, ahead of the safety of others, all in the name of wanting to get the mission accomplished. The mission is so important that I am willing to take extra risks or shortcut my best practices to try to get the mission accomplished. And sometimes pride is what can drive this myopia toward mission. So passionate about wanting to do a good job and so committed to doing the work on time and on schedule that you can kind of get myopia to that mission and lose sight of the fact that what you're doing really isn't as safe as it needs to be. Another barrier to awareness is urgency. What causes someone to feel a sense of urgency? Essentially this: the faster the conditions are changing around you, the more you may feel a sense of urgency to get something done quickly. In other words, you might say, well, I don't have time to do it the right way, so I'm going to do it the fast way. I don't have time to do it the 5-step process. I'm going to do the 4-step process. And contributing to the sense of urgency sometimes are pressures. Pressures for deadlines, pressures from supervisors, pressure from peers, maybe even social pressure. So what I'm going to encourage you to do as a tip or a hack is to avoid the no time to waste mindset. If at any time you ever think to yourself, I got to get this done in a hurry because I don't have any time to waste, you're probably setting yourself up for the barrier of urgency and the possibility of taking shortcuts. So another tip or trick or hack that I'd like you to consider is mentally rehearsing potential bad outcomes. In other words, when you're going along and everything is going fine at work and the work that you're doing, be thinking about what might I do if this occurred? Or what might I do if this happened? Or what might I do under this condition or this circumstance? And asking yourself, what would I do if, allows you to think ahead of the possible bad outcomes and to rehearse your potential responses to those bad outcomes. So if something bad does happen, it's not the first time you've ever thought about it. You've kind of done a mental practice or a mental rehearsal about what you would do under those conditions before they happen. Fear is a barrier to situational awareness. Now, what do people fear the most? Well, they've done surveys, and many companies have done surveys to try to determine what is it that people fear the most. And consistently, what is at the top of the survey list is the fear of public speaking. Now, the fear of public speaking in many people are greater than the fear of dying. And you think about how bizarre that is, that somebody would be more afraid of giving the eulogy at a funeral than being the person in the box. Now, what causes people to have a fear of public speaking? And why would I put public speaking on here in the discussion of situational awareness? For this reason, that if somebody has a fear of public speaking, and most people do, then they might also have a fear of speaking up when something is going wrong. They may just follow the herd. They may just follow what everyone else is doing and look at what everyone else is doing, and therefore it must be okay to do it because they're doing it, but even though you know it's wrong, but you don't speak up. What would keep somebody from speaking up? Fear. Fear of embarrassment, fear of ridicule, fear of consequence, fear of judgment, fear of what would people think of me if everyone else did this, but I spoke up and said that I didn't think that was right. Doing anything to try to avoid these consequences are powerful motivators. Couple that with the fact that most people have a lot of pride in the work that they do. A deep pleasure and satisfaction of knowing that they are doing things well and they're being successful. And to speak up to someone else who thinks they're doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason, when you know that it's not, speaking up can be very challenging. Overconfidence, a barrier to awareness. What causes overconfidence? Well, as people get training and they get experience, two things happen. Their confidence and their competence level rises. And a person who has a high level of competence and a high level of confidence is quite the asset to an organization. But some people drift over into a minefield of overconfidence. And here's my observation about what causes that to happen. Doing things, whatever those things are, that are less than best practice, and getting away with it. And they do it again, and they get away with it. And they do it again, and they get away with it. And all of a sudden, in their mind, they've got a new best practice. But it's not because of skill that it's working, it's because of luck. As experience increases, so does confidence, which can also then contribute to overconfidence. The more highly experienced a person gets, the less they may see they're vulnerable to having incidents and accidents. Experience can also increase risk-taking, causing someone to think, well, I have enough experience that I can take this extra risk in the work that I'm doing. Avoid shortcuts to best practices at all possible ways. Follow those things that are the best practices in your industry. Now, right along with overconfidence is another barrier that is almost always present with overconfidence, and that is complacency or the complacent mindset. When a person becomes complacent, they let their guard down. What does that mean? It means they're no longer paying attention to the dangerous things that are around them. And if you're not paying attention, you're flawing the foundation of situational awareness. The very core of awareness is perception, which is paying attention. And they're no longer paying attention. They can become desensitized to the risks that are around them, and they don't even see them as risky anymore. When you let your guard down, you may not even see or hear the dangerous things that are happening in the environment, which are the precursors or the indicators that you're heading in the direction of a significant near miss or an accident. Maintain a level of vigilance about the potential dangers that are around you. Even if they don't seem dangerous at the moment, being aware of them and being respectful of the fact that what you do is dangerous work, even when things are all going well, in just a moment's notice, things can change and you can have a near miss or an accident. Learn from near miss events. Within your business or your industry, there are incidents that are occurring that are near misses, minor accidents, moderate accidents, maybe even major accidents, maybe at different locations around your company or different geographic areas. Learn from those near misses, share those near miss experiences with others. Don't let someone else wait to have their own near miss. If you have a near miss event, gather information about what happened, try to make connections to these barriers to situational awareness, and share those lessons out so others can become smarter based on the lessons that we've learned, and we can become smarter learning from the lessons of others that are either in our same company or even in other companies but within the same industry that we are. Share the near miss data. Now I want to talk briefly about the standardization of deviance. The term standardization of deviance means that standard is the normal. Deviance is the undesired. The undesired behavior has become the normal behavior. That doesn't even seem logical, that the undesired becomes the normal. But in some work environments, workers can become so overconfident and so complacent and so lucky and have so many successful lucky outcomes that shortcutted way now becomes their standard practice, their routine, their norm, and they see nothing wrong with it whatsoever. Let me give you an example of the normalization of deviance. Normal, standard behavior, observable every day, no matter where you live, you can see this if you pay attention for it, and it's deviant, or what some would say highly dangerous behavior, easily observable, and that is texting and driving. And now I'm sure there are people who think, whoa, wait a minute, I can text and drive because I have a skill set. I can do it well. I can look down at a text message for 2 or 3 or 4 seconds and still keep the car between the lines and not hit anything. Now, how is it that someone could have that belief? Because they never have hit anything. They never have gotten into an accident. Maybe even when they drifted a little bit left or a little bit right, they didn't hit anything. There was no consequence. And all of a sudden now, they think they have a skill set. Their successful outcomes are not based on skill, they're based on luck. All right, so let me summarize by saying that what we've just covered are what I call the dirty dozen of situational awareness barriers: sensory conflict, mind drift, task fixation, distractions and interruptions, confabulations, auditory exclusion, urgency and pressure, multitasking, flawed perceptions of reality, mission myopia, overconfidence, and complacency. If you want to learn more about any of these barriers to awareness, what I'm going to encourage you to do is swing over to the SAMatters.com website. There you'll find all kinds of free resources available for you. I have over 400 blog articles, 230 plus podcast episodes. There are some books and videos that are available as well. And I have an online academy for anybody who would want to take their learning to a deeper level. If you want to get connected with me on social media, I'm on all the social media platforms. There's the website, there's my email address, and there's my phone number. My mission is simple. I'm trying to help you and your team see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
I think Rich's ability to connect with any crowd, that's a gift that he has, and it's easily transferable.
This is the second or third time that I've heard him speak. There's some teeth to the information that he brings.
It's been really good. Good mixes. He knows when to throw in a joke here and there to get you back involved.
Some tools. I'm a new lieutenant, so very, very interesting. And some of these things I can take back to the station and use with some of the new firefighters I have on my crew.
Something to get you thinking about your job more, big picture type stuff. I've seen them before. A good review for sure.
I have heard him before, yes. After he speaks, there's usually an enlightenment because now they're more aware of what's going on around them and what they're experiencing as they're responding to calls.
He's very, very knowledgeable. I'm enjoying it so far.
And that intuition, that's a big one. The video that he just showed up here, we're getting a lot out of this. I think this is a really good seminar, especially for new people and old. I think it's very informative. This talk gives us more ammunition to do all three.
They're relatable to what we have experienced or very well could experience, so he makes it easy to let the knowledge sink in.
I mean, it's awesome. A lot of stories you can usually relate to yourself and calls you have been on, aha moment. Like, he just helps you focus on picking out the right things. It's awesome. It's a refresher and keeps my eyes open. It's good stuff.
If people listen to the message that he has, it's an incredible message delivered by a very compassionate person. Strategy and tactics are going to always change. Situational awareness it doesn't change. It's always there.
He's got some good stories to tell, and he's very thorough with his stories, and it's interesting listening to him.
Very clear speaker, and he talks on our level because he's been there, he's been in the trenches. I think he's doing well, and I'm looking forward to the second half.
Since 2007, SAMatters instructors have helped more than 1,200 organizations and more than 67,000 individuals improve high-risk decision-making, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, highway workers, school bus drivers, aviation workers, oil refinery operators, and more. If you work in a high-risk, high-consequence decision-making environment, we're here to help improve your safety and your survival, and to help you accomplish the most important goal of all, and that's to go home to the ones who love you.
Welcome to Chief Miller. Chief Miller operates the largest social media page dedicated to the men and women of the fire service from around the world. Check him out on Instagram at Chief_Miller. Find him on Twitter at Chief_Miller. And check out the website where you can find Chief Miller Apparel at ChiefMillerApparel.com.
I'd like to take a moment to thank the companies and organizations, agencies, and departments that have hosted some recent Situational Awareness Matters training for their teams. The Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard in Honolulu, Hawaii, Eagle Materials Corporation in Grapevine, Texas, the Odessa Fire Department in Odessa, Texas, the Columbia Shoe Swap Regional District in Salmon Arm, British Columbia, the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Kittery, Maine, the Minnesota Fire Chiefs Association Conference in St. Paul, Minnesota, and the Boggs Run Volunteer Fire Department in Benwood, West Virginia. If you're interested in attending one of our upcoming programs, on October 17th, I'll be at the Association of Canadian Ergonomists Conference in Sudbury, Ontario. October 19th at the Loudoun County Fire Officers Seminar in Loudoun County, Virginia. October 28th at the Clearwater Regional Fire Service Conference in Alberta, Canada. November 3 and 4, the Anderson County Fire Department just outside of Greenville, South Carolina. November 7th, the University Heights Fire Department in University Heights, Ohio. November 8th, the Volunteer and Combination Officers Section Conference in Clearwater Beach, Florida. November 14th, the Rogue Interagency Training Association Conference in Medford, Oregon. November 19th, the Shoreline Fire Department in Shoreline, Washington. And then November 24th through December 11th, Syncrude Oil Refinery, Fort McMurray, Alberta. To see the locations of all the upcoming Situational Awareness Matters tour stop events, just swing over to the SAMatters.com website and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage labeled Live Training Dates. If you're interested in hosting a program for your agency or association or department, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the SA Matters homepage and I'll give you a call. If you want to become part of the SA Matters community of learners, there's a couple ways you can do that. Just check the show notes for this episode for how to get connected with us through our newsletter membership, podcast subscribers, YouTube subscribers, and on our social media feeds of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. There we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 234 of the SA Matters show is complete. Thank you to our awesome sponsors, Midwest Fire and Chief Miller. Thank you to all the companies, agencies, and organizations that have hosted live SA Matters training programs. Thank you to all the organizations that have hosted virtual, internet-based training programs for their employees. Thank you to the more than 2,500 students and graduates of the highly acclaimed Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. And most importantly, thank you, the listeners and viewers of this show, for spending some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit SAMatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.